Hello folks, and today I'm going to be doing the second part of the theory crafting gunboat video. Last time I did it on the tier 10 Russian destroyer, and quite a few people asked about whether or not the US destroyer, the Gearing, could do something similar or if it's drastically different. So that's what I'm going to do today, is take a look at the Gearing and see if the Gearing is capable of something similar or different, and if there are differences, where are they? So let's start off with, I guess, the first part of being a gunboat, the actual guns. The Gearing's guns have less range than the Russian tier 10 destroyer, and in case I decide to use the actual range module, which increases the range to about 15.5, the arc of the Gearing's guns are significantly higher, and at that range you're not really going to hit anything. So theory crafting for me suggests that it's better just to stay at 13.3, and instead of getting the range module upgrade, instead just getting the rate of fire upgrade, because the Gearing's guns, being the 127mm, also have a lesser chance of fire compared to the Russian guns, even with Demolition Expert. So I think the Gearing would benefit from just being able to spam out more shells. And also 13.3 kilometers is, I think, enough. It's actually plenty sufficient, I believe, for Invisi-fire. There's a nice comfortable buffer there. And also at about 13 kilometers, the arc, while still worse than the Russian destroyer, is a little bit better than if you were trying to do it at 15.5. So I think it's definitely not a bad thing to just have 13.3 kilometer range and get an increased rate of fire, because with that module your rate of fire goes up to 22.7, which is quite nice. The main advantage, I think, of the Gearing over the tier 10 Russian destroyer lies in its torpedoes. The Gearing actually has good long-range torpedoes, goes 16.5 kilometers, and I think that is going to pretty much be the thing that differentiates the two play styles. While the Russian destroyer, I think, is almost completely dependent upon its guns, the Gearing can use its torpedoes to cut off an area or to just cause flooding if possible, and then to use its guns to set things that have been flooded and repaired back on fire again. I think that's going to be the Gearing's thing. The other main difference in the Gearing and the Russian destroyer lies in the fact that the Gearing has access to this particular consumable, the defensive A fire consumable. This, I think, is going to make the Gearing a much harder target to sink by carriers. So if a carrier decides to go after a Gearing, I think the Gearing is a lot better prepared to defend itself. However, the Gearing is slower. It's slower. It's only 36.3 knots, and I think that is the main problem with the Gearing, is that the fact that it's slower is going to prevent it from kiting as well as the Russian destroyer can. However, I think the torpedoes is going to play a role there. It's going to allow the Gearing to throw torpedoes and then push people back and to hold them at bay. I think that's going to be the Gearing's advantage. Never mind the fact that the Gearing is also a lot more maneuverable than the Russian destroyer is. And also, finally, when you come down to surface detectability, 5.9 kilometers is very, very good, because that amount of detectability gives the Gearing the ability to just stop firing its guns, get into stealth range, and then use its torpedoes. So I think the Gearing it's still very capable gunboat, but I think the torpedoes give it another option that the Russian destroyer did not have. Alright, so let's go into an actual battle, and let's see how this particular ship performs. And this is the battle that I kind of got. Now, this battle is pretty similar to the tier 10 Russian destroyer battle that I had, in the sense that there was no carriers. And not only that, there were only 2 cruisers on the enemy team. Now, they did have 3 destroyers, however. Now, where the enemy team had their big advantage is their battleships. We had no tier 10 battleships in this battle, and the enemy team had a Montana and 2 Yamatos. Ugh, matchmaking. Some days you just confuse the hell out of me, because I have no idea how that is remotely close to balanced. Alright, anyway, so we're on hotspot, domination, north versus south. So I look at the map and I look at the sort of compositions of the team, and I think, ideally what I should be doing is taking C-cap and trying to hold C-cap. The Gearing does, I think, reasonably well inside the C-cap, because one, again, like I mentioned before, it has the guns that it can use to Invisi-fire. Not only that, but it also has the islands that can give it some cover. And with the 5-inch guns really, really high arcs, as long as somebody's able to spot something, I'm able to get quite good shots over the mountains. Furthermore, the torpedoes are definitely usable, so if anything does decide to come around the island, I will have a pretty good drop on them. So that's kind of my strategy. Go cap C, take it, and then hope that my team can cap B, and then we can hold 2 caps and go for the win. I am wary that the enemy team does have destroyers, and they have destroyers that can fight me. I believe in this battle they had a Shimakaze, a Fletcher, and a Benson. So all 3 of those ships can pose a certain degree of danger, the Shima and the Fletcher posing more of a threat than the Benson is. So again, heading towards C. The gearing is not fast. This is one of probably one of my bigger complaints about the gearing, is it's not as fast as some of the other destroyers, and I think this can affect it a little bit in trying to be a pure gun destroyer. However, with the tier 5 concealment skill and fully loaded for concealment, the gearing is pretty stealthy, which means it does have that ability to task itself for the sort of the stealth torpedo boat role. I think one of the ways for me to really look at the gearing and to really sort of conceptualize it is that while the Russian tier 10 destroyer is almost exclusively a gun destroyer, torpedoes aren't terrible, but I don't find it to be a purely sort of torpedo destroyer. It's not really that well suited for it. The gearing, on the flip side, while not the best gun destroyer, I think is more of a multi-role destroyer. It can take on both the gun role, which it can do reasonably well, and it can also take on the role of a torpedo destroyer. So in this particular instance, the gearing becomes more of a torpedo boat and don't really have to worry about your guns. Still, and this is doable really because the gearing is still relatively stealthy. The Russian destroyer, even with max concealment, has a spotting range of 7.1. The gearing only 5.9, which means even at this range, even without the smoke, this Atago still would not have been able to see where I actually was, and the only thing that the Atago would have seen is a cloud of smoke. So this gives the gearing that ability to switch roles really quickly, going from gun to torpedo, back to gun, and so on and so forth. Managed to bag myself the early kill, managed to take down the Atago. Now this is going to make my life a little bit easier. Remember, the biggest problems for destroyers as a whole are still cruisers, not including the Russian ones. Those guys are just a little bit too fast right now. The gearing is not that fast. In fact, the gearing's top speed is only a little bit faster than some of the cruisers, and that means that as a gearing, the cruisers are going to be a threat, and this is why earlier I mentioned the fact that the gearing's main weapon against cruisers is really its torpedoes. Just while the cruiser is still a reasonable distance away, to sort of try to use your torpedoes to push them away. Anyways, there was an enemy Benson in here. Now I'm patient. I'm not in any rush to jump out there and engage the Benson. Remember, that is not my role in this particular battle. My role is trying to eventually cap C and hold it. The Benson does not want to fight me. Like, let's be honest, if you're in a Benson and you meet a gearing, you don't really want to be there. So eventually, the Benson does back away from the cap. So I'm quite happy to just sit here, cap it, and then start engaging the other battleships and stuff. They're slowly making their way over from the A cap towards where I am. My plan at this particular point in time is I'm looking at the map and I'm like, okay, I think I can hold C. And I do see that quite a few of my ships were over at B, so I'm thinking, okay, as long as I'm able to hold C, if my team can spend most of their energy trying to hold B, we should actually win, even though our battleships are terribly outmatched against the enemy team. At least that was my hope. Now, you know how those things go eventually, right? I was in for a bit of a disappointment later. But still, at this early stage of the game, everything was going according to plan. I'd managed to sink the early cruiser, and managed to cap this point. Fantastic. But now what I was going to try to do is I was going to try to corral the battleships. I was going to start trying to keep them in this general vicinity, either forcing them to abandon any notion of coming towards the C cap, and maybe just having them head down towards the B cap. At least at the time that this was happening, I thought, okay, most of my ships are still there. Oh, you'll see. My team kind of takes off from the cap pretty soon. Okay, so this is the great thing about the gearing. It's not going to do as much damage per salvo against the ships as the Russian destroyer will, but the gearing has that phenomenal, and when I say phenomenal, I mean just insane rate of fire. With the gearing, you do not need the range mod. Let me just make that clear. With the range mod, you're never going to hit anything at max range. 15.5 kilometers, I think the gearing's shell travel time to target is 20 seconds, so good luck hitting anything. But with the gearing, if you get within 10 kilometers, your arc is nice, shells don't take very long to travel there, and you're still visible. And of course, with the insane rate of fire, I mean, you can just see what I'm doing here. This rate of fire is crazy, because you can basically have, I think it's like 3, if not 4 salvos in the air at the same time. Something like that, maybe 3. Yeah, so I'm just landing shots every few seconds. So, you know, this is the strength in terms of guns. And the gearing's guns are not bad by any stretch of the imagination. The fire chance is a bit lower than the Russian destroyers, but you mean the rate of fire will just make up for it. So the next thing that I'm going to do here is I'm looking at the map. I'm like, okay, look, the enemy's team, the majority of battleships have started to head down, which is great. They're not coming this northerly direction, and they can't really make a play for C. Of course, you can also tell where my team is going, right? Oh god, I think 3 of my battleships, 1 of my cruisers are going up the 9 line. Like, why are you there? You don't do anything up there. Okay, regardless. So what you see me do is I toss torpedoes up the 7, 8-ish line, and my job with those torpedoes is hopefully to corral the 2 battleships that are coming to where sort of around B7 is. I'm trying to corral them and trying to push them back. At least that was the plan. And then, of course, as soon as my torpedoes are gone, I turn my attention back to using my guns on the battleships that are now sort of grouped up in the middle section, right at the center. My team at this time have pretty much already abandoned Bravo Cap, which is going to make life very, very difficult for me because, I mean, I can't really race down there to try to take the cap. The sheer rate of fire, I mean, I'm still able to set fires, I'm still able to do damage to these battleships, and there's not much they can do. I mean, I am invisible after all. And you can see that the hits just keep piling up and piling up and piling up. My torpedoes for that northern squadron, they were going to miss. I guess I could have shot that one a little bit better. At the time, I was kind of throwing those torpedoes and trying to pay attention to other things. Here's an interesting little engagement here. Here's the Yamato. There's the Yamato, and the Yamato is sitting still. Now, a lot of the high-tier battleships, sometimes they do have a tendency of doing this because it allows them to, you know, sort of angle their armor in a way that allows them to stay protected. Well, it also means that if you're in a destroyer and you're doing the Invisi-fire thing, you can just keep pounding and pounding and pounding and pounding away, and there's very little the battleship can do. I mean, either they retreat backwards, they come forwards. In either way, you can always keep raining shells down on them. So you'll see that the damage actually picks up quite a bit, and it just kind of stacks up very, very quickly, because not only are you actually doing HE damage, you are actually also able to get in multiple fires. And with fire, the damage, well, that collects pretty quickly, because battleships lose HP by sort of a percentage of their max HP, and larger targets like a Yamato will take quite a lot of fire damage. I should have kept fire a few times on this battleship, but circumstances dictated other things, because I was starting to say, okay, look, enemy team have managed to cap Bravo, now I've got to do something about them. I've also got to try to do something about these 2 battleships that are still pushing us on this side. So yeah, I took a quick peek, tried to see where the prediction indicator for both the battleships are, and launched into sort of a common general area where they both might be in a few more seconds. Anyways, continuing to drop shells onto the Yamato, but my priority is not this battleship anymore. This battleship, realistically speaking at this particular time, is not really in the fight anymore. I'm not threatening my cap, not really shooting at anything else. So my priority is eventually to disengage from this Yamato and then engage the other ships that are actually pushing down the 5 line at the moment. Still, you can see that, I mean, just with fire and HE damage alone, I was still able to do a pretty reasonable amount of damage. Had I kept up shooting and just kept firing, I think I was able to, well, I think I would have been able to set a few more fires and maybe just do quite a bit more damage. But something somewhere started to spot me. It was actually the Fletcher that was behind me, and it spotted me, so I thought, okay, you know what, I'm going to disengage from this fight, because not much I can do, because if it spots me, then everything else has the potential to shoot at me, and I don't really want that at this particular point in time. Looking to the center of the map right now, I see 3 enemy battleships. We've lost B cap already. We have a marginal lead on points, which I know is not going to last. So I'm really hoping that if I can, I'm going to try to sink as many of these battleships as possible with a combination of gun and torpedoes. And then if I can sink enough of them or do enough damage that I don't want to contest the B cap, maybe I can get over there and cap it in time. It's not going to be an easy thing to execute, especially considering if you look at the map, like look at where my ships are. Oh my god, just I was really hoping that I was getting a little bit more support from my team, but that just did not happen. Okay, so regardless, I mean, there is still that destroyer that was coming from behind me, but again, he's a little bit far from me, so I don't think I'm the main target anymore. So I just return my attention to these battleships. The Yamato, the North Carolina. The Yamato, I'm going to have a hard time killing unless I land some really, really sweet torpedoes. But the North Carolina, I was thinking, okay, at this time, if I can kill the North Carolina, kill the turrets, hopefully buy enough time for my team, and hopefully buy enough time for myself to get over there and cap stuff. Yeah, and I do actually derp a little bit. I did derp a little bit, did put my ship into an island. So, oh well, I mean, even in good games, this can happen. Anyway, so, I mean, like, yeah, like, just not really getting as great of support, I guess, overall from the team. We have 1 cruiser, I think that's all the way down at, like, Juliet 5. It's like, okay. Anyways, so, yeah, I mean, so far, I've done a reasonable job, I think. I've kept the enemy team from coming to sea. I think even if I was alone on sea, I think I would have been able to hold that area pretty much by myself. So that's why I was initially kind of hoping to have my team be more around where Bravo is so that they would be able to defend it. Alright, so finally do take out that enemy destroyer, which was the one that was actually spotting me earlier when I was firing, which is great. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to come out from cover of this island, and I'm going to take a peek and see what's over there. I know that there should be 2 battleships around here. There it is. There's the North Carolina, and I'm pretty sure there was a Yamato there as well. There he is. And this is the other thing I like about the gearing, and more so than even the Russian destroyer, is that insane amount of concealment that I have with the gearing. 5.9 kilometers makes me very, very, very stealthy, and it allows me to feel okay and confident enough to just come out from behind islands knowing that ships are going to be somewhat safe distance, maybe like somewhat closer, but because my concealment, I know I'm most likely not going to be detected. Now there on this particular thing, I think I misplayed that a little bit. I should just let my torpedoes go and have my torpedoes take care of it, but I think I was a little hasty in firing off my guns. I think I was just hoping that maybe the Yamato would turn into me, maybe it would do something else, something just put it within that, you know, torpedo arc. But yeah, the Yamato kept going, but I did manage to have the North Carolina turn around, so bagged myself a battleship there. And that would be kill number 3. So looking back there, we are, well, leading by a tiny little amount, but it's hard now because I know there's 2 Yamatos and a Tirpitz. The Yamatos, at most, what I can do is just push them and just push them off of cap. That's the most I can do. The Tirpitz, I'm pretty sure I can kill, but my priority right now is trying to just push them off, try to get onto that cap, and just do my best to secure some more points if possible for my team. And it's not actually going to be that easy because, I mean, yeah, I mean, when you just get pushed off this much, it does make life quite difficult. I am spotted. I am spotted. So I know that somewhere in this vicinity there is another destroyer that's actually spotting me. So immediately I pop the smoke. Yeah, I know I did run into a second island. I know this was late. I'm getting a little derpy. But pop the smoke. So it became hidden, and then, you know, try to essentially go south and maybe loop up behind and try to do something there. But it's going to be hard. With the destroyer down here, there's not much chance for me to really push onto the cap. Oh, here he goes. There's those destroyer torpedoes, and yikes. Yeah, took one there. Ouch. So, not really good because destroying the vicinity means that I can't really Invisi-fire, so opt for the other role. I opt to become a torpedo boat. And that, I think, is the gearing strength over that Russian destroyer, as I mentioned earlier, is that swing role, that ability to go from gunboat to torpedo boat, back to gunboat, back to torpedo boat, sort of, anytime it wants to, really. It is a very flexible ship. So the Russian destroyer, which is basically completely dependent upon its own guns, the American destroyer isn't. It has that flexibility. So finally get a relatively decent salvo of torpedoes off, and we're almost about to lose here, and I was just hoping, okay, if I can kill the torpedoes, maybe get some extra hits on their Yamato, maybe hopefully cause some kind of flooding, have the Yamato rep it, and if I come back out I can set it on fire and maybe really do some damage. Then with the Turbot's kill, I was hoping also to maybe meet that Fletcher, because I'm like, if I can kill that Fletcher fast enough, then again I can get some more points. And if I can just stall the enemy team long enough where I can get a cap back, or I can just get on the cap so I can stop the points gain, it'll be great. Do see the Fletcher, it did pop up. Now remember, I did take a torpedo from that Fletcher earlier, so I am playing a little bit more passively because I just don't have that amount of HP. Of course, if I died right away, that would have been game over. Now, the gearing's rate of fire does allow me to continuously rain quite a few shells onto that Fletcher, but again, with not many points remaining, and the Fletcher being a reasonably durable destroyer, I'm not able to actually pick up that kill. I did do quite a bit of damage to that Fletcher with my guns, and as you can see, the rate of fire is phenomenal, almost double what that Fletcher was capable of. So that was a defeat, but what you should take a look at is the amount of experience and credits and everything I earned. So in that defeat, I got 408 hits, 10 torpedo hits. I had 2,307 base experience. I had more base experience than the ships on the winning team, which is phenomenal. And in terms of damage, I did approximately 225,000 damage in that loss. So to answer the question with regards to the gearing and being a gunboat, well, I think my answer is something like this. I think the gearing is a very, very flexible multi-role destroyer. It is capable of gunboating, although not to the same level as the Russian Tier 10. But at the same time, it also has the longer range torpedoes, which gives it that ability to also be the sort of the torpedo boat. Again, not to the same level as the Shimakaze on the Japanese line. Still, I think if you're able to combine these two together, I think the gearing is still a very, very effective sort of gunboat torpedo boat hybrid, which does take a certain kind of player to, I guess, play and to enjoy, as the role does require quite a bit of multitasking and also a lot of situational awareness. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this theory crafting video featuring the gearing as the gunboat today, and I look forward to seeing you all on the high seas. So have a good one, folks.